Our guardian star lost all its glow the day that I lost you. He lost all his glitter the day he said no, and his silver turned to blue.
I'm Peter Spears. I am a producer, movie producer. I'm here at the Ponta Lopud Film Festival, and I've been coming for a few years to the festival and for about 15 years to the island. And this is...
My name is Dan Minahan. I'm a director, and I'm here in Ponta Lopud at the film festival also, where we had our Croatian premiere for On Swift Horses, a film that Peter and I made together, which was released in the States. Now it'll have a release here in Croatia.
I guess it'd be interesting maybe to talk a little bit about how the movie came to be and how what the process was of developing this film in particular, since it starts with a book, actually.
Peter and I had known each other for many years. I think we'd seen each other socially. We were both at the same agency. And then there was a point, I think just before the pandemic, when you reached out to me, and I'd been doing a lot of series work, and you came to me and said, wouldn't it be great to find something to do together? You're visiting Provincetown. And
as I do.
We started to exchange books and ideas.
Among the many books that had been sent to me was On Swift Horses by Shannon Pufahl, which I had loved and sort of reached the threshold for me of a book, which doesn't happen very often, but you know, almost from the beginning, the book felt cinematic to me, and and I was very moved by it, and lots of the book felt almost autobiographical in ways, certainly some location and themes and things. And at the end of the book, there just was sort of left with this, for me, a super emotional experience. And that's usually when I'm like, aha, this, you know, might be Call Me By Your Name was that way, Nomadland, lots of them were like, they made me cry. The book like made me cry. Like, you know, if I'm sort of like, I'm crying at the book, then like, you know, might be the beginning of something good. So I called you and I was like, I think I might have found something.
And I said, I'm about 2/3 of the way through this novel, On Swift Horses. And you said, that's what I'm calling you about. And we realized we were both reading the same novel and had a very similar, you know, experience reading it. There's something for me that was very familiar and something that it's incredibly cinematic. I feel like Shannon Pufahl kind of was drawing on a history of queer literature. There's aspects of Gore Vidal, of Patricia Highsmith, of James Baldwin, like things that were familiar, but not quotation, just like these sort of like themes that kind of ebbed and flowed throughout the piece. And then a lot of cinematic stuff from different genres of melodrama and the gambling story, the love triangle, the kind of hard-boiled noir world of the racetrack. And it was just so exciting, the world she was working in. And the other thing that really struck me about it was that it wasn't a victim story, that it was ultimately a queer story where people took a lot of risks. And some of the things that really attracted me to the novel were the things that were the hardest to adapt, and some of them we omitted. Like there's this surreal scene of the horse walking into the house, and everyone's kind of drunk and staring at this horse and not sure what to do with it, and just didn't hold up on screen. It was beautifully executed, it was beautifully performed, but it kind of pushed a very intimate, character-driven story into magical realism. Right,
yeah. And that's often the case. Like a book will have moments that you remember as the reading of the book and in the reading of literature, where so much of that magic and that sort of kinetic energy happens in your head. It's required. You're the reading, and so you do all that, and then when we do adaptation, ideally, it doesn't want to be, as we've said, a Xerox copy of the book.
Yeah.
We want to release ourselves from the constraints of the book and be free to find how the story wants to be told cinematically.
Yeah.
And some of that you don't know until editing even. Like, you shot it and we wrote it, we shot it, we paid for it, and then we see it edited and we're like, oh yeah, no, maybe not. Tell me also like how, because I wasn't super as involved as I was with everything. I wasn't really involved with your preparation with the actors.
Mm-hmm.
And I know for these actors, so many of these reference points that you are using to talk about, as sort of the things that Shannon and you and Bryce, the screenwriter, and we're all kind of part of your library of knowledge of your life experience in the movies and things. How was this to sort of bring a kind of young generation of actors and to up to speed about kind of the world of this?
Well, first of all, we prepared all these documents that were historical documents of the news of the time, what was actually happening in the Korean War at that time, because the brothers are coming back from a tour of duty in Korea. What's popular culture, fashion, movies, TV shows, and music. And I found that each of them were attracted or even asked for specific things. Daisy Edgar-Jones she's a very well-read person, reads everything. And she said, what books would I be reading? And I said, well, that's a great question because everyone would be reading at this time because not everyone,
phones.
Yeah, not everyone's on their phone, not everyone's has television. So I gave her the book Peyton Place to read, which was the best-selling. I said, I'm not going to give you a whole bunch of books because it wouldn't really, you don't really have the time.
Certainly a steamy book about burgeoning sexuality and not
in a
queer
small
sexuality
town,
in a small
and,
town.
And became like a famous soap opera. First a movie and then a soap opera after that. So she devoured that. And Jacob also is a big reader. And I gave him On the Road. So
Jack Kerouac's
book and Peyton Place and On the Road are the two bestsellers in 1956 when our film takes place, which to me says so much about that world because people questioning the constraints of conventional relationships in a small town, and then On the Road, the beginning of the beat, or the biggest, awareness of the beat generation of artists and poets.
And this
and
was brand new stuff for them. They literally, these were not on their radar. They had not
Jacob, of course, had read it. He's like, well, of course I've read that. I was like, well, take another look at it, and we'll look at it together. And
I know Jacob wanted to watch some movies, and he liked sometimes his way in. It felt like on things.
In my first meeting with Jacob, Elordi talked about, well, actually, when I, as I was preparing this and as I was reading the book, I would imagine, we didn't have actors in mind. And so before you brought me Daisy and was like, Daisy would be amazing, I was imagining Natalie Wood, the famous actress from the late 50s, early 60s.
And, of course, all of those.
And because she had, Natalie Wood had a kind of a strength and a steely quality, but also a real vulnerability underneath. And you always felt like she was about to burst out of her
That's
skin.
Very Daisy. That's very...
And Daisy immediately locked into that, And then for Jacob, I had been thinking of young Warren Beatty. What is it, Mickey 17 and All Fall Down, and so many films from the early part of his career. Without mentioning it, Jacob brought up Warren Beatty, which said to me that he had an awareness of who he is and what his strengths are. And
but you also see a young Marlon Brando in there. I see a young James Dean. He's got that great face that just feels so much of so timeless and so contemporary in the ways that he's been successful in modern day stuff, like Saltburn or whatever. But also like he just, like the clothes from that period just fit him perfectly.
And there's this great scene in a movie, All Fall Down was a big influence for Bryce Cass and I.
Bryce, the screenwriter.
There's a great scene in All Fall Down where Warren Beatty's walking down the street and these women stop the car to give him a ride.
Get in, stud.
And I think there's something about Jacob that he walks into a room and he changes the chemistry. He changes the air in the room.
Right.
You know, and he's aware of his effect on people.
So you have these two people who meet at the beginning, their whole life explodes in this meeting, even if it's a quiet under the ground nuclear bomb. But then they don't see each other for the rest of the movie.
So they're just yearning for each other.
Yeah, yearning, and how do they stay connected? And in a book, you're flipping back and forth between chapters of like, now it's this person and that, and if they're talking or they're writing a letter or they're doing but you had to find in posts and stuff, how to keep them connected. And one of the ways you keep them connected, there was certainly letters, there was certainly like some phone calls, some that were created post and done in ADR, and so that's like the third chance you get, right? And like telling the story, like, so you can write your script, which you did. We shot the script, and that changed a lot while we were shooting due to weather and things like that. And then in post, you have the last opportunity now to play with the story, but the thing you get to add now in post to help tell the story is music.
But also there was a really important moment, and we'll come back to music, but a really important moment in post when we realized just how malleable the material was. And Kate Sanford, who really finished the film with us, had this great feeling of connecting them through movement and connecting them through similarities in their action. And it was interesting because Sean Baker and Sam came back from watching the movie last night. They were like, it's so interesting, like the way they're mirroring each other and echoing each other, even though they're apart, it makes it feel like they're together.
Yeah.
You know, so simple things like Muriel walks through the room and then Jacob walks across the catwalk, or, you know what I mean? Or Muriel lays in bed staring off into space and Julius is walking through the night.
Right.
You know, like these kinds of things just by the edit. You know, I mean, it's really, you know, like classic film editing.
Yeah,
you know, you cut to a shot of her face, you cut to a shot of him, and she's thinking of him.
Right.
You cut to a shot of his face, you cut to a shot of her, he's thinking of her. Right. And that was really beautiful. You know, it's not quite an epistolary story, but we added those letters.
Right.
And the phone calls are great.
Yeah.
You know, and then letters just became kind of like a interior voice. You know,
so let's, as we're wrapping up here a little bit and thinking about sort of the last thing that comes into play as you're making a movie is sort of the kind of the last collaborator who joins you almost, besides the studio, obviously is maybe the very last one and how you'll distribute the movie, but is music.
Yes.
And in this case, maybe we can talk just a little bit about how the collaboration with Lauren and how that kind of, you know, how you guys work.
He sort of reminds me a little bit of Harry Nilsson, and
but there's also like an
he's from another time.
Yes,
you know, and he's not from the 50s.
No,
he doesn't make where he has kind of this loose kind of 70s quality, but then it's not unlike what Shannon is doing in the book,
right? Which
is maybe why, you know, it's evocative of a lot of things, but it's completely modern and unique. And, you know, one of the great introductions you made for me was to Robin Erdang, our music supervisor, who you had worked with on Call Me By Your Name and Nomadland, and was such a great ally to this.
Right.
And so resourceful. And so it was very hard to find a sound for this. And so, you know, where we ended up was very different from where we started. We knew we wanted, I mean, listen, in this time period.
Well, remember, by the way, we've been using a temp song for the opening credits of Perfume Genius doing Take My Hand,
Can't Help
Take My
Falling in
Whole
Love.
Life Too. And we felt, and what happens always is you fall madly in love with your temp music, and you're like, I have to have it. And then we discovered that like another movie.
Red, White, and Royal Blue had just used it. We were like,
used it, and we're like, bah!
It was so, but like it really turned out really well.
Yes.
I mean, the whole thing that, I talked to Robin about from the beginning was like, listen, in 1956, the biggest artist in the world is the king of rock and roll. And I do not want to have any Elvis in it,
right.
And I don't want any recognizable songs in it because I don't want this to fall into the world of nostalgia.
Right.
So we worked really hard to find things that were, there were literally 2 different soundtracks to this. One that were all songs that we thought were great B-sides, or, a lot of queer artists. We had Chris Connor, we had
Francis
Johnny Ray,
Faye.
we had Francis Faye, Johnny Ray, Johnny Mathis, like all queer artists who are incredibly expensive. And
I know, because you're at the end of the movie, and now you're over budget. You spend all your money, and it always happens. And so all the music that you wish you could use, you can't afford now. So you got to get very creative.
That went out the window.
Yeah.
And I think where we ended up, Sean Baker came back. He was like, that music was incredible.
Yeah, and he does. So Lauren does it first, like sets tease us up with singing a cover of Mr. Blue.
I had first designed a title sequence. It's a kind of like something that I really enjoy doing. I started watching great title sequences, and To Kill a Mockingbird is such a great one. It has the girl's voice humming a song. It's kind of a montage of all of her toys. And I was like, that's really interesting. We have the dead letter board in the Chester Hotel in the end of the film.
Our guardian star.
The idea was, let's show those photographs, not reveal what it is in the opening over the titles. And I wanted an a cappella song. So I started really listening to a cappella songs from the period. Found Mr. Blue. You brought Lauren Kramer into the mix.
And we brought our own pictures, a lot of the family of all of us up on those boards. So
those photos are on the board. Lauren covered Mr. Blue, and we did it a cappella. And that was sort of like the genesis of it.
Ask for Mr. Blue.
All of this to say, ultimately, that like each one of these, every movie, and certainly every adaptation takes its own path. And you finds its own way, and every one of them is sort of, as we have said, like, an impossibility of miracles that come together to that allow it to finally go out into the world, and then now it lives out in the minds and hearts of everyone who finds it, and people bring their own experiences to it, which informs it. And we hear, as you were saying, you were talking to Sean and Sam last night, and their thoughts about it, and I ran into some other people who had seen it, and they had, very different takeaways,
It's an interesting film because without, it is about people trying to find themselves. It is about people, yearning for each other and, hungry for connection. But it's very open to interpretation.
Yeah.
And I think that's challenging about it, and I think it's also what's exciting about it.
Yeah, I remember the head of the studio was just like, I remember him saying at South by Southwest to you, he's just like, this is the same guy who released Call Me By Your Name, and it's at Sony Pictures Classics and a lot of other movies and everything. But he was like, Daniel, you made a queer film that everybody can love and take away something from, and have it wasn't, that studio, they've been so great about it, and they were so wonderful about embracing it, but they also loved, the universality of the story and the humanity of the story, regardless of what you bring to it in the way of sexual orientation or not, or what lens you're watching it through. So,
that's the thing with that right off the bat, was the idea to make it, when we read that book, this is a very contemporary story. But it's told, in the mid-1950s. It's a very American story, but I think it's very universal.
It's a bit of a fantasia, a little bit. The fact that, yes, all these things aren't going to probably have happened in that time in that way, but isn't that what we go to movies for, is to see that sort of thing. So anyway, cool, it was fun.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's interesting that we had a fist bump. Never done that before.
This is sort of like, this is the end of the tour for this one.
It's kind of wild. It's hard to let go of.
Yeah.
It's hard to know when it's over.
Yes. And so magical to see it in that space last night.
Really cool. I find wind intoxicating.
Well, because there was a lot of it last night.
There was a lot of wind last night.
Blowing up dust while the horses were across the screen. There was like dust blowing in the faces.
And people smoking while the actors are smoking on screen.
Yeah, it's great.
The full experience.
But we'll come back with another one sometime.
Yeah.
Cool. Anyway, hope you guys liked it.
Then prove it by going out on the slide, proving your love isn't true. Call me Mr. Blue.